I'm honored to invite Major General in Reserves Benny Gantz, the chair of the National Unity Party. Sorry, she said the wrong name initially. And she's also former Minister of Defense. Mr. Gantz, please. Thank you. We always make sure to change our name, to make sure to spice things up. So, hello everyone. Good afternoon to all the guests, all the distinguished guests. This year's conference deals with vision and strategy in an era of uncertainty. And indeed, we are facing some vast changes that have an impact on Israel at a time of tremendous uncertainty. I'd like to begin with a short story, something that happened to me a week ago in an elevator at Bnei Brak. I was going down the elevator, and with me in the elevator was an ultra-Orthodox Jew, more or less my age. He shook my hand, and he said to me, "Ishar koach, well done." So I asked him, what does he do? And he told me that he imports wheat. So I asked him, how much wheat does Israel actually grow or produce? And the answer he gave me was that the numbers are pretty low. So I asked him, where do we import wheat from? And then he says to me that in the past we would to bring most of it from the Ukraine, but now he needs to find some other suppliers, alternative suppliers, and make sure that the prices don't go up. So there you go. This is a story about a war that's going on thousands of kilometers from here that has no direct involvement with Israel. It's not happening because of Israel. It has nothing to do with Israel, but it manages to influence all the households here in Israel, and how it changed the work of that ultra-Orthodox guy from Bnei Brak. The Middle East is also changing. We must say quite sincerely and honestly that the level of impact we have on it is quite limited, but we must be prepared for everything. Iran is forging full speed ahead towards nuclear capabilities, and it might have sufficient nuclear material for a bomb or a small arsenal of bombs in a matter of weeks. The Gulf countries, and I see the ambassador of Bahrain here, and we've started establishing a regional architecture with them versus Iran and in general, and developing our relationship. We are constantly examining whether they will change their course. Assad is fortifying his regime after years of war and has now come back to the fold of the Arab League. The rise in energy prices and food prices is impacting the stability of the regime in numerous countries in the region. Turkey might wake up to a dawn of a new day. And with the Palestinians, there's a new generation, and that generation doesn't know any Israelis. They no longer like us. And this generation is maturing, and the era of Abu Mazen is nearing its end. All these create global uncertainty, regional uncertainty, and obviously uncertainty for us. The Jewish people throughout its history has managed to weather and survive periods of uncertainty. We left Egypt without knowing how we will cross the Red Sea, and when our belief wavered, we received the Ten Commandments as a code that guided us in our lives as a nation and gave us safety, security, and order for a long journey. And then millennia of years later, the Israeli leadership led the establishment of the State of Israel in 1948, when it wasn't even clear that they would manage to weather the expected attacks. And on the backdrop of all this, there's one thing we should remember, one thing which is correct, one thing I'd like to focus on. When everything around you is unstable, then the best way to deal is, first of all, to remember who you are, to remember who we are, to make sure that you're properly structured, and around that, to design the necessary activities and measures. The State of Israel is currently facing tremendous challenges in security, in the economy, in society. It must unite and formulate ways of action instead of fighting and being torn from the inside. The priorities it needs to adopt is, first of all, education, which is the basis for growth, for our growth and development as a society. It must address the national infrastructure, especially in the Negev and Galilee. And then after that, we need to address law and order and the rule of law. We must make sure that there is a proper welfare policy for all those who need it, and national decency. I wish to repeat this term, national decency, in the allocation of resources and their mobilization and what each one gives the state in their fair distribution, and not just out of political, forceful, and exaggerated considerations. All these must become part of the continued fortification of our safety and security. For us to remember who we are, we better remember who and what we are: a Jewish, democratic, safe, just state which is based on the foundations of the Declaration of Independence. A country with tribes that live next to each other, and a Jewish state, but not a religious one. A liberal country that respects all of its citizens and all their rights, including the ultra-Orthodox Jews and the Arabs, all of them. A country that has a democratic design that preserves the strategic relations with the U.S. and Western countries, a country that reaches out to peace to all of the nations surrounding it and knows how to fight when there is no choice and to win. As it is reflected in the state budget, the current government is operating according to momentary political priorities and not national priorities that try to gear for the future. It attempts to change the Israeli DNA, the path we've marched on since the establishment of this country. And let me tell you that the only real crisis with the budget is the one that will be formed in our economy and not between the Haredim or Otzma Yehudit and the Minister of Finance. The irresponsible conduct of the government undermines our relationship with the U.S. and the alliance, which is based first and foremost on shared values. On top of the existence of the People's Army, there is a question mark, and worse than anything else, the first significant thing that the government had asked to promote in such a complex reality is a terrible damage that will be caused to our ID card, to our form of government, to the Declaration of Independence. And then, faced with all that, the Israelis decided to take action. They have taken the streets, they're marching the streets for 20 weeks now. They are raising their voice and saying, we believe in the State of Israel and in its values, and this belief is stronger than any government. As you all know, we are in the midst of a dialogue in the president's residence. Of course, I do not wish to undermine the ability to reach agreements, and I'm not going to expose the details here. But I do wish to emphasize that the principles that I've established from day one is not to have a politicization of the legal system, that we will advance the basic law legislation, that we will make sure that judicial review is maintained to promote reforms that will help Israelis who encounter terrible waiting terms for the court system. And if we manage to reach agreements, then everything will calm down on this respect, especially, or at least until the end of the 25th Knesset, and perhaps even longer than that. May such a coalition that is based on the most extreme elements of Israeli society. I wish we could establish a constitution with broad consensus. I wish we could have enacted basic law declaration of independence. I believe that a real and comprehensive constitution can be promoted only through a coalition that is based mainly on the Zionist alliance of the center parties, and I shall do everything in my power in order to promote this in the next Knesset. In the current situation, we need first and foremost to protect the Israeli democracy and its legal system, and to prevent a rift in this people, damage caused to the economy and harm caused to Israel's security. And I say here in the most explicit and clear way, from the principles that I have set, that we've decided on in the National Unity Party, there is no way back, and that's with an emphasis of not politicizing the judiciary. We said that before we entered the discussion in the president's residence, and this is how things shall be at whatever price. I hope that we will manage to make some progress in the near future and reach agreements that will serve as a basis for continued legislation under full consensus. That's with an emphasis on the understanding that if there are topics that we disagree on, they will not be promoted unilaterally like any legislation which has an impact on the nature of governance in Israel. And the most explicit example for that is the program that we presented that will include increased supervision over a state prosecutor's office. And I would like to emphasize that alongside the fact that I believe that it is essential to replace this bad government, the National Unity Party and myself will continue to reach out and to find agreements and maintain democracy. If we can shake the hand of the other side, we will do so unwaveringly, without blinking an eye, and we will not allow political considerations, as important as they may be. We will not give any room to political considerations in such a crucial decision. I will not risk Israeli democracy for political reasons and considerations, and I do hope that the other side will do the same, and I hope that they will not prefer the politicization of the judiciary over the retention and protection of the democracy, which relies on an independent and powerful judiciary above anything else, before anything else. And before I finish, I would like to say something that comes from my heart. 5 months ago, I stood here, I think exactly on this stage, and I called upon everyone to be engaged in dialogue. After the Minister of Justice presented the judicial reform that turned out to be a regime overhaul, I thought that the chances for dialogue would be low. And as expected, they sent me to, disrespectfully, from the other side to speak in the Constitution Committee, and I went there and spoke there because the Knesset is important as well. Unfortunately, some parts of the leadership on my side were also against this measure. Friends and consultants told me that this will tarnish my image, that the National Unity Party will be demolished, will crash. But my compass indicated otherwise. And of course, here I go back to the most basic point. And once again, this is my message to you and to the entire Israeli society at a time of strategic uncertainty. Always remember who you are. Always remember who we are. March with your truth. always put on the table what's right and what can be done. And when reality is unstable, just as Yoni Rechter and Ali Mohar wrote, something inside you must always say to you, go straight, continue in your own path. And alongside that, open your eyes and look around you, as Nomi Shemer, the lyricist, wrote. Open your eyes and you will see that the people are with you and that they understand where they're heading. So this is my message to you and to all citizens of Israel who are concerned with the current situation in Israel. I will continue fearlessly in our path with great pride and belief in the fact that our cause is just, because good people know the road, and it is with good people that we can march. Thank you very much.